So yeah, welcome everybody. I speak English because I see we have some international guests here. Welcome to everybody. We do a workshop here and some presentation about the professional camera accessories of ARRI. And the professional camera accessories include mechanical accessories like mat boxes, mechanical follow focus and so on. And they also include the electronic control system, so electronic components with software and so on. So my name is Hendrik Voss, and I'm doing the first part about the electronic control system. And after that, my colleague Philipp Fischer will continue with the mechanical tools. So the electronic control system is basically, a time ago we used to call it the wireless lens remote system or lens control system. But we changed the name to electronic control system because it's not really just controlling a lens, but also a camera. And it also provides lens data and other metadata that's very useful for post-production. And it's not at all wireless. If you are aware of our system, you know that the motor controller has many wires that can be attached to it. So we call it the electronic control system. Yeah, and basically that's really a set of tools to control cameras and lenses, as I just said. And we've worked very hard during the last year to complete the current range of products. So to say the fourth generation of the electronic control system. We already had the wireless compact unit as a hand unit. Maybe you're aware of it. I don't know, are there any camera assistants or focus pullers? Okay, so maybe you already made some experience with it. And the wireless compact unit was introduced around 2 years ago. Won a CINEC award here at the last CINEC 2 years ago. And it had some special functions and also integrates very deeply or more deep than other controls with the Alexa camera. So with the Alexa camera, that was really a system that provides much functionality. But with any other camera, we also had an older motor controller, but it didn't really provide all the benefits the hand unit could provide. That is lens data display, for example, and other functions. So at this year's NAB, we have introduced a range of 3 new motor controllers. And I would say now this current lineup is completed, more or less. We are working now very hard on, or even during the last month, to now take all the feedback that we got from you guys, from the users, and we take that very serious, and implement that in the software and make the product better and better over time. So we brought out the 3 new motor controllers, the universal motor controllers UMC4. That is basically the Alexa Plus module, but separate for any camera. So all the functions that were previously available with the Alexa Plus only are now available with any camera, not only with ARRI cameras, with any third-party camera as well. And then, because there's a new trend of camera drones and gimbals, and also of 35mm PL mount ENG type lenses, we brought the 2 small, we call them mini motor controllers, SMC and EMC-1. So the SMC-1 is a single motor controller that connects to 1 motor, and it's very small and lightweight, so it fits very well on a Steadicam or on a camera gimbal. And then the EMC-1 is a motor controller that controls ENG lenses. So the servo module with the motor that's already attached to an ENG lens, you can now make use of it and have a very, very light and small setup that's really plug and play, because you just have to connect the lens to the motor controller, and no additional motor required. So you don't need rods and all those things you would need before, and can control all 3 axes just with that small motor controller. We have them all here. You can have a look later. So that's the current lineup, and I've just said it. So that would be a typical single-axis control with a single-axis unit, the single motor controller, and 1 of the 3 motors that we provide. Or you could take just ENG type lens like a Cabrio zoom or the new Canon zooms, and we are also talking to Ingenieur and to Zeiss to support their servo modules. Attach it to the small EMC-1 and then use, for example, the WCO4 to control all 3 axes and get the lens data instantly on your lens data display. And then, of course, and we have it there on the Alexa Plus, we have the UMC-4, and that's really the big guy. That's really, I mean, it's not so big in regard to size and weight. It's smaller and lighter than our main competitor or some other manufacturers in the market, but it provides most functionality. Provides things, and I will talk about that later, that the other units don't provide. And that's quite unique for that system. So now all the functionality, again, from the Alexa Plus is available on any camera. In that case, we have a f55. We made it look nice, I think. Cannot even see which camera is behind it so much. We try to cover it with all our equipments. That's actually a photo which we took when we made our new brochure. The brochures are over there. You can have a look afterwards and take one with you. Now, I talked a lot of lens data, and that's really an important part of our system. And lens data has been a topic for quite a while, and not many people really use it, or I had the feeling at least that when people talk about lens data, many times it sounds ugly. Metadata always sounds complicated, and it sounds like work, and some people, included me, it took a while to really understand the benefits of it, but there are benefits. So we spend some real energy on it to make this lens data very easy to use, and also to provide the benefits, make those benefits easily accessible to you who have to work with the system. So let me talk a bit more about the lens data. The one most obvious use of the lens data is the lens data display. And I mean, that's, everybody can imagine it is good to see how your lens is set. If it's on a crane, you have the full control of your system. You cannot just remote control your lens and your camera, but you also see the status of your lens and your camera. In particular, with the WCU4, you see focus, iris, zoom settings. You see your depth of field. You also see the camera settings. You can control the camera settings also through the hand unit. So you have control over the system, even if you cannot really access it. And that can be really helpful. The system provides many functions. I'm aware that not all the functions are needed all the time, but in situations where you really need one of those functions, they can really save you a lot of trouble and time and eventually money on a production. So you see on the hand unit there, you see a pre-marked focus ring. And that's the second benefit of lens data. In the US, it's very common already. In Europe, I see it sometimes, but not very often, the pre-marked focus rings. The pre-marked focus rings basically uses a technique called lens mapping. And what we are doing there is we are mapping the scale of the pre-marked ring. You can buy 5, and we have 5 different rings in meter and 5 different rings in feet scale. You can map those scales to the focus scale of your lens. Meaning that if you drive your focus ring, for example, to 3 meters, your lens will drive to 3 meters. And that's only possible if you have the lens data for that particular lens. Otherwise, your system, your motor wouldn't know where the 3 meters is and how many encoder counts it would have to drive to a certain direction to reach the 3 meters. So obviously you don't have to mark the rings anymore, but I would say that's maybe even the smallest benefit of all benefits. A really big benefit is that you usually maybe you would need, or for most lenses you would need 1 or 2 rings probably. So the rings are only different in the close focus distance, in the mark of the closest mark of the ring. So for example, we have a ring that starts with 1 meter. And if you see that most of the scenes, you don't come closer than 1 meter, you can use that 1 ring for all your lenses. The only thing you have to do is you have to prepare, if not yet available, a lens profile or a lens table for this particular lens. And you have to create that lens table once, and once you have it, you can always use it again and again, no matter with which Alexa or with which UMC-4. So when you're having that lens table and you select it in your motor controller, you can use that pre-marked ring with that lens. So you can use 1 pre-marked ring with virtually all your lenses. And that helps you to get used to that ring. Because you're using the same ring for all lenses, you're really getting used to the angles. You know, from here to here is 3 to 5 meters. You do it again and again only with that 1 ring, no matter which lens you're having. So you're really getting used to it, and it helps you. And you don't always get a new ring and have to get used to the new ring again. So that's one benefit of the lens mapping or the pre-marked focus ring. I also had an AC who told me that he would use another ring that starts with a very close focus distance. And he would use it in situations where he has to make fast focus racks. And by using that ring, he would only have, in that area that he needs, he would have a small way to move from A to B. So many different ways to make use of those rings. Yeah, so that was a focus mapping, and another benefit is focus tracking. And maybe some of you know focus tracking already from our older system. You remember we had the lens data display for focus puller. It was a display, a separate display that you could attach to your camera, but you could also attach it to your hand unit. And it had a button at the side, and if you pressed that button and you had an ultrasonic distance measure on your camera, the focus motor would drive to the measured value. And exactly that same function we are offering now with the UMC-4, and we will offer it in future with the Alexa Plus cameras. And we call it focus tracking, because once you press that button and you keep it pressed, your focus motor will drive to the measured value of your distance measure. So you're measuring 3 meters because a person is 3 meters in front of the sensor plane, and the motor will drive to that 3 meters, and it will follow the person as he moves or she moves. So that's kind of an autofocus function. That can be helpful in some situations. Imagine you have a small corridor and Steadicam set up, and the actor is running and the Steadicam is following him. And you as a focus puller behind the Steadicam, so there's no space. And eventually you will run around the corner and you don't see anything anymore. In such a situation, the focus tracking can be very useful. And again, same as with the pre-marked rings, that function is only possible if we have lens data. If we don't have lens data, you cannot make a match between the measured value and the position of the motor. So again, lens data is necessary for that focus tracking function. So now the big question is, how do I get lens data? How do I get a lens table? And basically for a lens table, to get lens data, you need always two things. You need to know where your lens ring is. So you need an encoder that determines the position of your lens ring. And in order to understand that raw encoder value, which might maybe be 3152, and you don't know what 3152 is, you need a lens table that translates that raw encoder value to something you can understand, maybe 5.50 meters. So that is the information that is in the lens table, raw encoder values and the human readable values. And everything in between will be interpolated. Now maybe you are aware that the Alexa Plus camera has a thing called Lens Data Archive. And that's exactly an archive of pre-programmed lens tables that we from ARRI put in there. So there are all the lens tables from master primes, ultra primes, master anamorphics, Allura zooms. They are all already in there. We did that for you. And you just have to select it. And the encoder that delivers the position of the lens ring, that is in the motor, in the CLM2, CLM3, or CLM4 motors. So you have your encoder and you have your lens table. With the LDS lenses, already everything in the lens. So in the LDS lens, there's a magnetic strip inside the lens, that is an encoder. And there's a file inside the lens file for that particular lens. So when you attach your LDS lens to an LDS camera, like in Alexa Plus or Studio, the LDS file will be transferred to the camera, and the raw encoder values from the lens will also be transferred to the camera. And the camera has much horsepower. The camera makes a calculation, frame accurate. And the same happens with the UMC-4. We have a lens data archive in there with all the lens tables. And again, we have the encoders in our motors. And there you select the lens table, and then the UMC-4 will do the calculation and send those values to your hand unit, and you will see them. Now that were the benefits you have on set, and I was explaining how it works on set and how do you get the lens data so that you know why do I really have to do all this? What is it good for? But that's not the only use for lens data. Of course, in post-production, lens data is also very useful because you know there are many VFX shots these days. And when you do a virtual effect, you have your real image that you record with your camera, and you have your virtual background. And both of them should be like seen through the same lens. You won't notice a difference that this is virtual, that is real. So you have to know which lens did I use and how was that lens set. So we provide a function to record this lens data with every image with the Alexa Plus camera and the Alexa Studio camera, any Alexa that has a LDS mount. And then this frame-accurate lens data is instantly available with the images, so there's no guessing. Otherwise, before you maybe make a note, and you have maybe the type of the lens, but during the scene, the lens settings were changed. You don't really know how, at that point of time, how was my lens really set, because you are changing the focus, you are changing maybe even the focal length. But with the recorded lens data, you have it frame by frame. And then you know, I have that lens angle, I have that depth of field, and then you can go and make that same setting for your virtual lens and make it match. Much faster and easier than you would do when you guess. Or if you have to find it out manually. Now, there's a scene just as an example, and that's a company called Lightcraft. They have trackers, and the tracker gives them the position of the camera in space, but they also use our lens data, and it's extracted from the HDSDI signal, and then have a previs in real time, so it doesn't even take until post-production a few days later. They do it in real time, have their green screen here, and in real time calculate their backgrounds. And they can do that because they know how their lens is set, and they usually use zoom lenses, so they change the focal length. And while they're zooming, the backgrounds would also zoom, because they instantly get that information. Now, I told you in the beginning that the UMC4 does the same like the Alexa Plus, and that also includes the lens data recording. So the device you see on the camera over there, the UMC4, that is not just a motor controller. It also includes a timecode module and an inclinometer that gives you the roll and tilt data from the camera. And you can record the frame-accurate lens data just as with the Alexa Plus inside or with the UMC4 onto SD card. So whenever I trigger the recording of the camera, and later I stop the recording of the camera, and the camera creates a file, a clip with the images. At the same time, the UMC4 will create a metadata file with a timecode, the camera index, and the focus iris zoom data. And then in post-production, you will be able to match these metadata with your images and know how your lens was set. Now, there was one gap, and we don't like gaps, at least not such gaps. Some gaps we like, but not such ones. And the gap was, imagine you have a manual follow focus or a third-party lens control system and not a LDS lens, and you will not get the lens data. So when you set up that workflow and you have that gap, you have a problem, because then again, you have to do it manually, and you want to get rid of it. So we brought out a new product at IBC. It's a very small product. It's a small fun product because it's not much headache. There's almost nothing in there. But an encoder. We called it the Lens Data Encoder 1, LDE1. It looks like a motor. You will attach it. You would attach it to the lens just like a lens motor, but it's not an active device. There's no motor inside. There's just an encoder in there. So you would attach it to the lens, maybe to your focus scale, on one side of the lens. On the other side of the lens, you might attach a manual follow focus. You would connect the connector to the focus connector of the Alexa Plus and select again the lens file in the camera, and then this encoder would generate the data to find out where your lens was set and will record it with the images. So that's the Lens Data Encoder LDE1. We have it over there on the table. You can have a look. And then the second new thing at this IBC and Scenic, the second news, and that's really the most important part for me, and it's really a cool cool feature. I guess it has missed in the last months, and now we have it at least very soon. That is a new software update for the WCO4. And it provides lens programming through the hand unit. Before, it was possible that you create a lens file for any lens with the Alexa Plus camera and a laptop, and you would have to connect the laptop with a special Ethernet cable to the camera, and you would need 3 hands to do all this alone together. And we wanted to make it faster and easier. So now with the WCO4, we have a new interface, and you can program a zoom lens, I would say, in less than 3 minutes. And after doing that, it's not remaining in the hand unit. You will store it on the SD card as a file. And that file, you can keep it. You can create your archive of your own lens files. You can put it in any Alexa Plus or Studio camera, or in the UMC4, and use it again whenever you get that lens again. So you only have to do that once, and then you keep that file, and then you're ready to go. And then you have all the benefits I just mentioned in the beginning about the lens data. Now that was a lot of stuff, I guess, so we of course prepared something for you. We have all the information on the website for you at arri.com/ECS. That is for electronic control system. We have a new brochure. It's over there. And we have an ARRI news article about lens data. And all the benefits are, again, very easily explained there. So feel free to take it when you're leaving. Yeah, and now I'm through with my presentation, and I would hand over to Philip. And if there's some time afterwards,
or maybe just right now, if you have questions.
If you have questions, you can of course ask. And I want to say, you could put your hands on the equipment. So are there any questions?
How about lens tables for cooks or engineers?
You can create. You could.
Create it on the WC?
Yes, yes. If you have even a Coca-Cola bottle with a PL mount, you could create a lens table for it. It's very easy. We can try it later. It's still in a beta version of the software, and I'm happy about your feedback, but it's very easy. And you don't do it once, and then you have it. And we also provide a function in there that if you have a lens table and you see for some reason there's an offset or you have to correct a value, you can also just load that table, correct what you need to correct, and save it again.
Any further questions? Another question?
Yes.
Is in the motor control, is there a lens data archive?
Yes.
Also in
the full lens data archive is in the motor controller. Same like with the Alexa Plus.